and it just takes a few minutes for the notification to appear on screen. Okay, so the meeting of the Community Wealth Building Commission of the 27th of October 2021 is now recording. At this point, I would normally take the Sedernt. However, as the first item on the agenda is introductions, I'll simply confirm that I have apologies from Heather Knox and Suman Sen-Gupta. I'll just check to see if there's any others that have joined the meeting. Chair, it looks like we're still missing Councillor Cooper and Councillor Fagan, and also Elizabeth from the University of the West of Scotland. I'll now hand back to you, Chair, to begin the proceedings.
Thanks very much, Susan. I think probably, as I say, the idea to have an introduction, I think it was quite remiss of me last time, as many of us don't know each other, not to have had that introduction and to try and make it a wee bit less formal than our normal council meetings. So what I propose to do just now is just run through the Sedernt as I have it, and just have everybody introduce themselves, a wee bit about themselves, so that we get a better understanding of each other's position within the Commission here. So I'll start as I have the Sedernt here with myself. John Ross, leader of South Lanarkshire Council and the Ward Councillor for Ward 19 in Hamilton here. I've been the leader of the council since 2017, and it's been a wonderful 5 years, and looking forward to continuing in the future. Whether I'll be leader or not, it's a different story, but there you are. That's my story, and I'll take you on to Councillor Alec Allison.
Thanks, John. You said Councillor Alec Allison for Ward 3, which is the rural ward, bigger right down to Lead Hills. I'm also an active farmer and have owned a small business before in the past. Leader of the Conservative group in the council.
I thought you were going to forget to add that, Alex.
No, that's well enough known. I don't need to advertise it, John.
Councillor John Bradley.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor John Bradley, Councillor for Ward 13, unlucky for some, Cambuslang West. I'm also the chair of the Social Work Committee and chair of the Integrated Joint Board for my sins. That's about it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, John. Robert Brown.
Yes, Councillor Robert Brown, representing Rutherden South Ward. I'm leader of the Liberal Democrat group, growing Liberal Democrat group, I should say. And I'm a former MSP and solicitor by profession originally.
Thanks, Robert. Councillor Chalmers.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Councillor Maureen Chalmers. I'm Councillor for Blantyre Ward, which is Ward 15. And I'm here in the Commission as the Chair of the Community Planning Partnership. Thanks.
Okay, dokes. Thanks very much, Maureen. As I say, Councillor Cooper, who is the leader of the Independent Group, is not here as yet, and Councillor Joe Fagan, who is the leader of the Labour Group. No doubt they'll say something when they come in. Cleland Snedden.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Cleland Snedden. I'm the Council's Chief Executive, second time around at South Lanarkshire. I've been here now nearly 2 years, so thank you.
Thanks very much. Paul Manning.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Manning. I'm the Director of Finance and Corporate Resources with the Council.
Thanks very much. Susan Somerville.
Morning. I'm the Committee Administration Manager and I'm acting as Clerk for the Commission. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Andy Aird.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Andy Aird. Local business person, have been born and bred in the area of Lanarkshire. I'm also Regional Chair for Scotland for the Federation of Small Business.
Thanks, Andy. I see Heather's not here, so move on to Stephen Sweeney.
Hello everyone, hi, I'm Stephen Sweeney from VASLAN, the third sector interface for South Lanarkshire, and I guess I've been in the post, 7 months now, can't believe it, flying by, and really enjoying engaging, promoting and involving the third sector and working alongside yourselves as colleagues to improve cross-sector relations, and I guess as well as being third sector rep, I'm here as a CPP rep as well today, and look forward to the meeting. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Tom Little.
Hi there, Tom Little here. I'm the Council's Head of Communications and Strategy, and the strategy side is where much of the work of the Commission comes through for the Council's perspective.
Thanks, Tom. Neil Reid.
Morning, everyone. I'm Neil Reid. I'm the Research and Improvement Manager with the Council. I guess I'm a sort of behind-the-scenes gopher in relation to community wealth building, running around coordinating some of this stuff. Thanks.
Thanks, Gopher. Oh, sorry, Neil. Geraldine.
Thank you, Leader. I'm Geraldine McCann. I'm the Council's Head of Administration and Legal Services. So Committee Administration Services fall within my remit. And I'm also the Council Monitoring Officer. And like Neil, I'm probably a behind-the-scenes gopher. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Craig Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. I'm Craig Ferguson, Head of Finance Transactions within Finance and Corporate Resources, and I've got Head of Service responsibility for procurement.
Thanks very much, Craig. Scott Dunsmore.
Thanks, Chair. Scott Dunsmore, Insurance and Risk Advisor with the Council. I work under Craig's remit, have responsibility for corporate insurance and risk management arrangements for the Council, and I've had some input to the risk register that's on the agenda for today.
Thanks very much, Scott. Stephen Keating.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Keating. I'm currently the Economic Development Manager at South Lanarkshire Council. I'm surprised to recollect I've now been here for 24 years. I'm a chartered surveyor by trade and started in the council as an estate surveyor, and my role has now evolved into economic development with responsibility for physical investment, regeneration and business support and development. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And last but certainly not least, Rhonda Leith. Rhonda.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Rhonda Leith, the Council's Community Engagement Manager. So I've got responsibility, obviously, for talking to our communities along with my colleagues and supporting the community planning boards. So happy to be another gopher.
Listen, thanks very much, everybody, for that input. I think it gives us a wee bit of insight into each other and makes it a wee bit more friendly as we go forward. Let's go on to the business here. Declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I don't see any hands up, so I'll take it there's no declarations of interest. It takes us on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Does any colleague have any questions arising or business from the previous minutes? Nope. Again, I'm not seeing any hands risen, so I'll take it that we're quite happy with the minutes from the previous meeting. Let's move on now to items for consideration. The first of these is item 4, the Community Wealth Building Risk Register. That's on page 9 to 18 of your pack. And can I get Craig to give us an update on this, please, Craig?
Thank you, Chair. The report provides the Commission with the draft Community Wealth Building Risk Register and also details the proposed risk monitoring and reporting arrangements. In terms of background, it's been recognised that community wealth building could signal a fundamental shift in the Council's approach across a number of different service areas. Therefore, it was agreed that a risk register would be developed to accompany a detailed action plan and also very much to support the overall governance arrangements in place. In terms of the development of the risk register itself, the risk insurance team led by Scott consulted lead officers during May and June of this year on those risks that potentially impact upon the aspirations set within the strategy. So following this consultation exercise, a risk register has been prepared that details the risks that can impact upon the 5 pillars noted within the strategy. And I would also add there's 3 overarching risks within the risk register itself, which is detailed within Appendix 1 of the report. It is in terms of a flavour of some of the risks. They're provided at 4.3 and includes, for example, the scope to increase the spend with local business and social enterprise is potentially limited due to lack of capacity or indeed inability to meet council requirements. And also now worth highlighting is that town centres decline with increased numbers of neglected town centre assets, decreased footfall and also a reduced spend within the local economy. Of course, the risk register itself will remain a live document as the work evolves around community wealth building over the coming years. And therefore, at Section 5, we're proposing the monitoring and reporting arrangements, whereby the Community Wealth Building Group will review and update the risk register as required, progress the actions that are detailed also within the appendix to the report, and also provide an annual risk report to the Wealth Building Commission. I can refer the Commission back to the recommendations and ask that the Community Wealth Building risk register is approved, and also the proposed risk reporting and monitoring arrangements are approved also. Thank you, Chair, and Scott and I are happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Craig. I'll open it up to colleagues. Does any colleague have any questions for Craig or Scott? Robert.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. There's maybe a sort of misuse of the thing, but I noticed two or three things come out of the risk register. One relates to the Strathclyde Pension Fund, and one to the, I suppose, the linked question of the town centres and the spend local issue. And it's not so much a matter of the risk element, but I wondered if behind that we could get some sort of flavour at some point, possibly in some sort of report later on, because I think they're both important issues, about the potential with the Strathclyde Pension Fund of being able to access any kind of funding there in this context, what the limitations on that are. And then with regard to the town centre and the spend local, what sort of work is being done or could be done in that connection that would assist us there. Both of them, I think, are quite important issues against the background of what we're trying to discuss here.
Thanks, Robert. I would totally agree with that. Alec, I'll come back to and we'll see if we'll come back after Alex. We'll come back and see what Cleland has to say on that. Alec.
Yeah, once again, it's just to highlight in the spend profile, Craig, the review procurement practice to deliver more local spend where possible, yet the actions, if you like, the risk description, etc., doesn't highlight anything that we are going to do to improve these regulations to make procurement more straightforward for small and medium-sized businesses. I think that I would like to see that beefed up quite a bit to say what we are going to do to make it easier. More training, etc., I don't think covers it, or meet the buyer events, don't think covers it. We need to make it more straightforward, I think, for these businesses to be able to access some of these contracts.
Thanks, Alec. I think you'll see further down on the agenda, Alec, that we're actually taking into consideration the decision that the council took our last meeting to change the procurement details for local businesses, and that will be in there at some point, obviously not before this meeting, but I'm sure that will be taken into consideration, and that's a huge move forward, and I would expect some discussion on that item later on the agenda. But no, you're quite right. I'll bring in Cleland.
Also needs to be in the risk register.
Yeah. Cleland.
Chair, I wonder Craig was going to maybe respond to Councillor Alison. I'll maybe defer to him and then I'll come in the back of that, if that's okay.
Okay, right. Craig.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in relation to procurement procedures, obviously so much of that is laid out through Scottish Government regulations, but clearly we've got flexibility for the procurements at the lower end of the spectrum in terms of value. And as the leaders obviously mentioned there, we have got the quick quote report for discussion later on. I think it's safe to say, obviously, we are very much trying to make sure we can streamline our practices, particularly for quick quote where we can, to essentially to assist local businesses in their ability to tender. Ultimately, there will always be a minimum set of requirements the council has to set out, essentially around transparency and openness, and also ensuring accountability for public funds. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Craig. Cleland.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Just going back to Councillor Brown's comments, I think it's wholly appropriate we can ask the pension fund for a kind of statement around their priorities investment and potentially bring that back to the Commission. There is a point, though, I do want to nail, because I keep seeing it repeated in a lot of national debate, and it's worth, and I know this isn't what Councillor Brown was implying, but I think it is worth kind of nailing this. The public sector pension fund doesn't belong to government, doesn't belong to councils. It belongs to the members, the individual employees within Scottish local government. And the trustees of that pension fund should be making decisions in the best interests of those employees. So it's not a play fund. It's not a fund that councils or government or any other public body should direct the investment on. Now, where we can align ethical investment with the interests of the membership, then that's the ideal scenario. But I do see a growing number of comments at a national level that implies that that either governments or councils can direct pension funds as to how they use the members' money. That belongs in the Teamsters Union in the USA and some of those connotations. Just to nail it, this is the individual employee's money. It sits in the pension fund. The trustees should be doing that in the best interests of those individual members. But as I said, I think the Councillor Brown alights on a really good point, and I think it is appropriate we ask the pension fund to potentially articulate what their priorities for investment would be. Thanks.
Thanks very much. As far as Alex's point on procurement, I know that the Scottish Government obviously with taking an improved look at community wealth building, obviously have to realise that some of the procurement things in the past which have stopped us from going where we want to go with community wealth building have got to be changed in order for us to utilise the full range of powers within our scope at a local level. So I think that the more local authorities that take up community wealth building, and the more that the Scottish Government sees that that's the sense of direction, the more that these procurement laws have got to change in our favour so that we can maximise the effect of it. I see that Paul has his hand up. Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry that the hands are a wee bit sticky this morning. And to be honest with you, I was going to make many of the same points that Cleland did about the pension fund. I think your point's really well made, Chair, around the Scottish Government impetus behind this and the role that community wealth building plays in the programme for government. And I do think as an authority, I think we are viewed as being pretty well placed now in terms of where we are with community wealth building. One point I would make just about this paper, just need to be clear as to what the nature of this is. It's about looking at the risks from that perspective of the risks, and then trying to look at the mitigating actions that we're undertaking to try and address them or to lessen them. But the point I would make is not all the actions that we're undertaking are necessarily going to be in this risk plan. Right, the primary place to go and look at those actions, particularly around procurement, is probably in that action plan that we brought to the last meeting and that we're going to report on again later on in the agenda in terms of the paper that I think Neil's going to go through, which looks at the action plan and the reporting arrangements for that. So just to give that wee bit of input. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I don't see any hands, but I see suddenly Andy. Andy, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I appreciate the moves that are already afoot to the procurement for small businesses in the area, and I think it is a good thing, and congratulations on actually making a move. The Community Wealth Board situation, from a governmental point of view, I fear, I might be wrong, but I fear that particular part of legislation won't be discussed in this year's business in Parliament, And I would ask that any of you who have influence with your parties maybe have a discussion on that, on the leaders, and say, look, this is something that really needs to be brought forward, because the legislation that exists, which I think actually derived from European legislation originally. So, I mean, that's ancient history. We should, if we're going to get any decent out of Brexit, it should be something like this, where we can actually decide for ourselves what the legislation is to encourage local spend. But I fear that unless there's some, activity level at Holyrood to say that let's bring this bill forward, or the actual debate forward to get the legislation changed, it might be a year away. The FSB are obviously the policy units busy trying to encourage the government to do something about that sooner rather than later. And the other point I would bring up is that, do we have a sort of stake in the ground from a metric point of view as to where we stand today from a local spend, and how we're going to measure that going forward? That's something that I think would be good to see, good to feed back to local businesses and the communities to say, here's the progress that we're making, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Andy, and it's great to see you think that we've got some influence. Wish that were true. Okay, thanks very much for these comments. I see Craig wants to come back in on that. Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in relation to your point, Andy, and how we actually measure local spend, we do provide a range of performance information in the Council's annual procurement performance report, and that's obviously available online now for 2021 financial year. But certainly we are now considering, within the confines of the working group at present, just what actually is local spend. How do we define it? How do we measure it? And ultimately, what scope is there to improve that local spend at different tiers going forward through the various actions we can take? So I think that's something obviously we'll report back to the Commission on, both in terms of what local spend could look like and how obviously we then monitor it and measure it, as you mentioned.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up at this present time.
Chair, I can see Councillor Allison's and Councillor Brown's hand, but I'm not sure if that's my machine or whether they're wanting to come in.
Well, we had problems with the hands over the last couple of meetings, and Cleland come across with a thing yesterday. If you refresh the column, it shows you which hands are still up and which hands are not. I refreshed the column, and Alec and Robert's hands went down. So I'm really not sure where we are now. Is Alec and Robert's hands, are they legacy hands, or are they back up?
My hand was down at the time, John. But
right,
just, can I make a comment, seeing we've got an opportunity? Just following on from what Andy was saying about local spend. It has been mentioned here before, but I think we need to be careful about that. Because if we get more of our local spend, it helps businesses in South Lanarkshire for South Lanarkshire contracts, but it does not help them going into other areas, because if they're doing the same, there's less of an opportunity. So unless we're creating a bigger market, there's no actual benefit. What I think, I'll go back to the point I'll make again, is making it easier for all SMEs to be able to access, and that being part of the risk register. Yes, quick quote comes on further down, etc. But I think we need to be more focused on enabling these small businesses to access contracts wherever they are in Scotland.
Yeah, I quite agree, Alec. I mean, I've got sort of Joe Rose. We've got to look after South Lanarkshire, but really we're partners with North Lanarkshire, and then as part of the Glasgow City deal, I sit on in cabinet meetings there where we're talking about increasing the generation and the economy of 8 authorities within the Greater Glasgow region. And we don't want to do anything at the detriment of another. We want the whole thing to move forward. So it's incumbent upon us to look at ways in which we can add value to everybody's area. So yeah, I quite agree with you. Andy, will you want to come back in on that there?
Yeah, just to say that through meetings with Craig and Stephen, that we're actually already progressing the situation the FSB have undertaken to communicate the opportunities through SDP and PCS education meet the buyer. It's all about communication to small businesses. Unfortunately, where there's a legacy of poor history where local businesses have failed in the past to get through to a final or even to achieve any business through a tender. And the feedback hasn't been great as to why they lost it. And that leaves a legacy of probably apathy about the whole thing. So we've got that to fight against. But we have the tools. We have the communication tools. We have the ability to do it. And with SDP on our doorstep, I think that's a massive help to us, even though they're a national training opportunity. So I think there has been moves already. And as I say, I have to applaud Craig and Stephen for we've had meetings already about how we actually make sure that businesses are aware that the things are changing and that it's actually happening as we speak. And we'll continue to provide that communication as aggressively as we possibly can.
I mean, I don't know how in some ways we take this forward, because Maureen and I were discussing this the other day where there was an employment fair there, and there was over just last week, and there was over 500 jobs on offer, and there was only 69 people turned up, and that's a real problem going forward about how we try to match the job situation with the number of people that are going to come forward for these jobs. So maybe not on this item, but this is certainly something that we need to discuss in a wee bit more detail about how we take this forward. And I mean, I've got a role as the chair of the steering group on Business Gateway, and Maureen's and the supplier, the programme there, and the employer. So, you know, I think there's a room for a joined up role here to try and make sure that all of these things are covered as we go forward. So I bring that up at another time. Okay. I don't have any hands up on my screen now. Do you, Susan?
No, Chair, no hands up.
Right. Okay. Can we take it, colleagues, that we approve the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. Thanks very much. We'll now move on to item 5, which is Community Wealth Building Commission Progress Report. That's on pages 19 to 24. And Geraldine, if you could possibly come in on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks to set up a Community Wealth Building Progress Group, or perhaps following Neil's lead from earlier, the Gopher Group, which will really ensure that the actions of the Community Wealth Building Commission, which you agreed in your action plan, are taken forward. There is already an internal working group within the council that is taking forward the council action, but we really need a wider group that is representative of everyone on the commission. And therefore, at section 5 of the report, it seeks nomination for membership from every member on the group, from the partners on the group, and it may include council officers, representatives of the Health and Social Care Integration Board, etc. Everybody that's set out at section 5 is expected to be an officer level group so that it can be driven forward by the Commission, and there would be regular reports back. Now, there is a terms of reference for the group, which is set out at section 4 and appendix 1, a draft terms of reference for you to consider. And it's also suggested in section 5 of the report that the Commission has, or Commission members has, until the 24th of November to submit nominations to the Chief Executive of the Council, and then the Chief Executive would finalise that, be given delegated authority to finalise it and bring a report back to a further meeting of the Commission to let you know who the members are. It's also proposed, as you can see at section 5.4 of the report, that the meetings of this progress group are 8 weekly. However, as necessary, if business requires further meetings, then that would be set up to accommodate that. Taking you back to the recommendations, the report seeks approval of the establishment of the group, approval of the terms of reference, nominations for the Community Wealth Building Progress Group, and that the Chief Executive of the Council be authorised to finalise the group. Now, there will need to be a chair of this group, and Commission may feel that it would be appropriate for the nominations for the chair to be from an independent body, so that it's seen to be a whole community structure and not just led by the council. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Geraldine. Yeah, I welcome this report. And like you just said there, the idea of an independent person heading it up would probably be, in my terms, an advantage to us. So, yeah, and the sooner we get it in place, the better. So I'll open up to colleagues. I see Maureen has her hand up. Maureen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. I would term it as another partner chairing the progress group rather than an independent person, because obviously this is a partnership group. Suppose I'm just steeped in the CPP stuff now. We've got a progress group within that drives forward the work on the community planning partnership, and it works really, really well. Again, it's cross partners, and they really take forward that more kind of practical. I would describe it as gophers thing, really hard working folk that drive forward all the detailing what we're asking folk to do. I'm just conscious as well that, and I know that Cleland and Paul particularly will know this, as will some other partners, that we've also recently formed an outcome leads group. There's a more strategic group that ensure that our outcomes are delivered on with the community plan. And I know that we've got a gap on that group for someone from more the economic side of things. So hopefully that will be considered as we go forward, so that we make sure we get that outcome leads group is kind of driving forward the strategy as a whole, as the bigger picture. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Maureen. I see you have Stephen Sweeney's hand up, and then Alec Allison's hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Geraldine, for going through the paper. I'm very happy with the setup of the group and the terms of reference that's there. And I guess in the nature of Maureen's partnership, a shout or the encouragement for an external, if you like, if it would be creating a useful dynamic, I'd happily put myself forward and offer my services as that external chair. Won't be offended if I'm shot down, there's somebody better placed, but it's always good to have an option on the table. And I guess from a VASLAN point of view, with relations with the authority, keen for us to be an active partner, and I guess on a personal level, keen to be an active contributor to this agenda. Identify, that it maybe creates opportunities for the third sector to increase its, business community connections as well, which is probably a gap we've identified, and maybe just overall build on the kind of pandemic cross-sector working. That isn't a pitch, just a few points to consider, and won't be offended. You need to go away and reflect and see if you get anybody better placed. But good to have an option on the table. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that contribution and standing up to the plate. Stephen, we'll just take it just now and see if we can get contributions from other members, and then we'll come back to that. Okay. I see Alex hand up.
Yeah, John, it's just maybe a question to get a bit of understanding. The membership, I take it that list is not definitive, because I was wondering if we shouldn't have some representation from the business community, either Andy through the SMEs or some other form. And also, is there not a role for unions in there as well, or am I being too broad in this?
I think there's definitely a role for as many of the non-elected members. Anyone else in the commission can put their name forward. It's as I say, it's more an officer stroke partnership led group. I'm not sure if who else wants to come in on this. I see I've got both Andy and Maureen's hands up. Andy.
Thanks, John. I'd be happy to participate in it from a business perspective. I've got another year in my tenure as regional chair for Scotland, and probably then would, if I don't continue with that, would end up as an area leader still with the FSB for Lanarkshire area or west of Scotland. So quite happy to participate, support Stephen as a chair, as an independent chair. If you needed two chairs to help, obviously from an absentee basis or a vice chair, then I would step in if necessary.
Thanks very much. Can I just clarify how many people we would be looking for in such a steering committee? Paul? Or Geraldine?
I think Geraldine was looking to come in a second. Just to probably maybe give a bit of context to this, right? And Geraldine can give the fine detail. And I was probably looking just to give Councillor Allison a wee bit of comfort on his point. Under membership is talking about everybody who's represented on the commission and on the community planning partnership. So, Geraldine will shoot me down if I'm wrong. I don't think we've put a limit on this. This is meant to be an inclusive group, and folk could join it as, essentially as they wish, as they feel needed. And it wouldn't be the case that any parties, definitely not Andy, the FSB, or the private sector business community, or the third sector would be excluded. So I don't know if Geraldine's got anything to add to that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Geraldine?
That's correct, Chair, what Paul said. The examples given in the paragraph are representative. It's really for the Commission to determine who should be on the group, and there would be opportunities to add to the group if, through the working of the Commission's action plan, there was more representatives required.
Thanks very much, Geraldine. Can we at this meeting today, if we have certain individuals put their names forward for positions on that, can this group take a decision today on that? Well,
yes.
Or Geraldine?
I'll cede to Cleland first.
You're on mute, Cleland.
Sorry, apologies. I think we were both going to say something similar. Let's just grab these offers. I think these are helpful offers from both Stephen and Andy. And unless anybody else is throwing themselves into the pack, let's accept them. That gives us a partner chair and a partner vice chair. And we can then start to put together the detail of membership beyond that. I think one of the other comments was about trade unions, etc. Actually, to be honest, we'll co-opt people on that can contribute to this agenda. So the membership might move quite fluidly depending on what items we're looking at. But I think we're in a position today to take that decision, move forward on it. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Cleland. Unless there's anyone otherwise minded, then I'm quite happy to ask colleagues to accept Stephen and Andy in the positions that they put themselves forward for. Is there anyone?
No,
agreed? Right, that's great. Okay, that's fabulous. So I would imagine then what we'll do then is we'll go out and we'll look for nominations for other folks to come in by the scheduled date, and we'll take it from there with yourself, Cleland. Okay. Thanks very much. We move on. Oh, Paul, you've still got your hand up according to my list. No, okay, dokes. We then move on to Item 6, which is Community Wealth Building Commission Action Plan, update 25 to 36. Neil, if you would like to come out of the background and give us your thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. This report brings a Q2 progress update on the action plan that sits alongside the Community Wealth Building strategy. So it covers the period April to September 2021. So although the action plan itself was formally brought to the Commission for approval at the last meeting on the 31st of August, we've been taking forward actions since the start of the strategy, because otherwise I think it would be pretty good going to have all of this stuff done in a couple of months. So it covers that 6 month period, and the action plan has been put onto the performance reporting system, Improve, And the format of these performance reports, I think, will be familiar to a number of people on the Commission because it's used within the Council to report a number of plans and strategies, including the council plan itself. But it's also used by the community planning partners to report the community plan to the CPP board. So the format, I think, should be fairly familiar, and it's pretty straightforward. So the full report against all of the actions that we're considering at this point in time is in the appendix to this report, and the actions are listed together with a bit of narrative about what the progress is, and we use a traffic light status to indicate how well things are going. So in the covering report, you'll see that at 4.3 there's a table which tells you what the traffic lights mean, and essentially, you know, if it's blue or green, everything's good. If it's amber or red, you maybe want to have a closer look at it. And there are some where nothing much is happening or we don't have the information, so they are designated as report later. So the action plan itself is a 3-year action plan, you may recall. We've got year 1, year 2, and year 3 actions. So years 2 and 3 actions haven't started yet, and we wouldn't expect to have an update. So at 4.2 in your report, it's just saying that there are 89 actions altogether. There's only 66 that we would expect to see progress in year 1. And so those are the ones that are the focus of this update. Those are the ones that are listed in the appendix. So in terms of the status of those, there's a summary at 4.4 in your report. So you can see that against those 66 actions, then something's happening against the vast majority. So there are 2 of them that we've got report later. We've got green for 58 of them. 4 are deemed to be complete, and there's a couple of ambers sitting there. So we would expect, if the Commission's happy with this presentation, this format, we would bring a similar report at Q4, which would be the full year. So really, if I could take you to the recommendations, it's really just to note the contents of the report. I'm happy to take your comments on the format and the presentation, and obviously try to answer any questions you might have, though I'm not an expert in the specific items, so I would hope that maybe others could pick up if there are specific questions on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Neil. Well, there you are, colleagues. First of all, are we happy with the format and the way it's been presented? And secondly, do any colleagues have any questions on the update at this present time? I see Robert's hands up. Robert?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I sometimes have an issue with the presentation of these things in the sense that they always have a list of what you may call technical requirements, if you like, and you sometimes lose track of the overall objectives of the thing, which at the end of the day is to increase the economic activity, I suppose, of small and medium-sized businesses and social enterprises in South Lanarkshire. And I just wonder, really, by way of question on that, if there's any way of drawing out that top heading, if you like, but also we look at page 29, it talks about, for example, assessing local markets and the capacity and willingness of businesses to grow. Now, I'd like to see some of the meat coming out of that, because it seems to me that, particularly post-COVID, there's a change in the economic background that we're looking at. A lot of local businesses have had to adapt the way in which they operate here. There are probably a number of new opportunities as well coming through. We've got in the background with COP26 and all that, the ongoing issue of green jobs and things, which sometimes has a sloganistic element about it and isn't always pinned down in terms of what it means. And I just wonder if we're able to kind of pull a bit more meat out of that particular area in terms of what the actual areas which are most suited to us be active in these things, if you like, on them, where we can give the best support and where we can actually effectively make the biggest bit of difference in terms of the economic opportunities and the chances available for local small businesses and social enterprises.
Thanks, Robert. I think, we can certainly look at trying to find some way to delve down into the details of that and see where we are. So I think Stephen Keating wants to come in on that one. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair and Councillor Brown. Just in recognition of what you're saying, Councillor, and we'll go on to talk a wee bit about social enterprise later. I think there's additional resources that's going into economic development at the moment, and it does recognise the areas that will, we're most able to collaborate on under the community wealth building banner. We're currently looking to recruit people to help us promote South Lanarkshire as a location and to engage with our businesses. We've got a new business gateway contractor who we're looking forward to really upping our game in terms of business starts and support. And I think so far, having gone through the transition to the new operator, I think they're performing really well so far. Partly the recruitment will enable some of our existing resource to concentrate more on some of the specific sectors that we've historically sought to support, like construction specifically, where particularly with the widening the scope of Quick Quote, we think there's some really possible opportunities for early wins, both in terms of increasing our local spend, plus improving our engagement with the sector and SMEs, and supporting them to grow and access opportunities out with South Lanarkshire, as well as through our own processes. We're recruiting for the tourism sector as well, which has obviously been adversely affected. So we're identifying some of the areas where we think we've got strengths in South Lanarkshire where we can we can contribute more support. We're looking to just kind of relaunch a new business support grants to offer some financial support in this regard as well. But we're just coming out of a real intensive period of COVID support, and we're now beginning to focus on recovery. And I think through the work of the Commission, some of these questions that you're quite rightly asking, we'll be focusing on and reporting on as we progress.
Thanks. Could I come back briefly on that, John, if I might?
Yes, please, Robert.
That's all very helpful. I absolutely take the point of the development and the support that's given there. 2 points occur to me, though. One is, if you like, it might be useful to have some sort of indicator of whether there's any significant hits are taking place there, if you like, if we're getting particular movements where there's been an increase in employment or new business coming in, some sort of more detailed analysis on that in the report. And I guess the other thing is really the just the opportunity, whether there's any opportunities which we're not getting at. I mean, it's maybe not the right example, but I remember previously I had some involvement with a group that were looking at community control of wind farms, and it's to do with the one on that eventually became a Glasgow District Council one on Cathkin Braes. But the general idea was that community ownership of a wind turbine produced considerable income revenue streams, which were then able to be used to support local opportunities of various kinds. So I just wonder if there's anything like that that can kind of give some meat and substance to what we're doing here, which will give a bit of element of support there. Something just slightly different, slightly new. Are we actually hitting the opportunities on some of these things?
Stephen, do you want to come back in that, or I know myself certainly from the Business Gateway Steering Group, we have a new company on board, Elevator, and they have been doing an excellent job, as Stephen said, up to this present time. And we do get figures from them on the number of startups and business statistics, which I'm sure could be shared to give people an indication of just exactly where we are on that subject. Stephen?
Yeah, and just as part of that, ongoing work. We will do the analysis of where the business opportunities are, where businesses are starting to support the key sectors as we identify, and make sure that the support is targeted to the right areas to get the best kind of outcomes. And as part of a future social enterprise strategy, we'll be looking at the different models of your third sector, be it community interest companies and the social enterprises, the voluntary sector, and we'll do an analysis of the market, the opportunity, and we'll direct support where it is. And as I said, we'll report through the Commission as we progress, and we'll be collaborating with FSB and VASLAN, etc. And then we'll report on progress, as I say.
Thanks, Stephen. I'll bring in Paul and then Cleland, and then we'll go into Andy and Alec. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. It was hopefully maybe just to give a wee bit of comfort to Councillor Brown, maybe just about the nature of this report again. So remember what we'd done, and Neil's explained this. We had the content that was in the strategy that was framed around these 5 pillars. And what we did the last time was say, okay, what are the actions that we're going to do in order to try and deliver these? So what this is a high-level dashboard report on progress. But to give you a bit of comfort, Robert, I don't expect you to get the feedback from this paper as to the extent to which these things are actually happening and the impact that they're having. I would hope that, it's not a case of hoping, I think we would put in the agenda for some of most of these areas as a more detailed progress report to give you assurance and detail of the impact that they're actually happening, and a bit more detail about what's going on, as opposed to a simple brag rating. So this is a high-level dashboard. I would absolutely intend that we get fuller reports on specific areas coming back to the Commission, and at the end of the day, it's up to the Commission what it gets in front of it in terms of reports. So hopefully giving you a wee bit of comfort, Robert. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cleland.
Thanks, Chair. And I'll maybe pick up the other side of Councillor Brown's comments. So that the generic term green economy, I think people have been talking about. So there's quite a bit of activity around this, and Councillor Ross will have seen a presentation from Grant Thornton, who were commissioned by the Glasgow City region to look at the broader terms of what's been called retrofit. So looking at the improvements and adaptations that could be made to existing housing stock, all tenures, to degasify, I think is the expression again they're using, but to change a heating source, to improve thermal efficiency, to improve housing conditions, etc. The reason I mention this is probably the biggest scale change programme I've ever seen in my career, and we're talking in the Glasgow City region around about 880,000 residential properties that need to go through a treatment to achieve the existing targets in relation to carbon. This is pre-COG 26. So it gives rise to a long-term, and I mean long-term programme of possibly as yet unknown technologies, because it's moving so fast at the moment. You're in that kind of Betamax VHS kind of thing about what kind of technology do you suddenly launch into. But the implications for businesses here in South Lanarkshire and also broadly in the Glasgow City region are enormous. So we need to try and capture what that looks like. We need to then see the response of both the UK and Scottish governments to what comes out of COP, and how they will take forward the retrofit programme. There's also business opportunities for the council's own business units, because we have obviously existing squads, and without being really obvious, we've got people who maintain gas boilers. In 10 years' time, we may not be installing gas boilers. We need to retrain, and we might have scope for some business opportunities for the council. But I'm particularly focused in on establishing some of the manufacturing base here in South Lanarkshire that we've lost over a period of time. And if our business community pick up the relevant cues, so that we're not importing everything from far away across the globe, and we're therefore not subject to problems in the Suez Canal and various other things. If we can actually get indigenous local manufacturing feeding a local construction industry, there is a pipeline of work here that is definitely 20 years worth, and the scale of investment will be enormous. So without getting into a massive amount, we're also looking at things like a range of kind of renewable sector opportunities so that we can advantage ourselves in future funding rounds. And there's some work being undertaken through the CMT, and we hope to get some feedback relatively shortly from some work that's been done in conjunction with a couple of partner agencies. So it's just to kind of give a measure of comfort. There's a lot of activity at the moment, but the scale of ambition and the scale of opportunity is genuinely, truly enormous. Probably the biggest I've ever seen in my career. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kyle. Andy, I think you were next to Dennis Alec.
Oh, thanks. Just to echo what Councillor Brown said, I think there's a big opportunity with things like wind farm. I mean, we've got Banks Renewables on our doorstep. I know they're a big company, but they do have representation. Things like the KIPE Community Wealth Fund and things like that. It's got to be good, but one of the most successful opportunities that I'm aware of was Fintry, and Fintry actually devolved the control of their fund from one single wind turbine, and they used that on an annual basis to develop the local area, sports fields, theatre in the local community, you name it. They've spent their roughly £25,000 a year income from that. But it took it away from any kind of decision by the council. It was set up as a trust and set up locally. And I think that we have in South Lanarkshire quite a number of social enterprises, charities that could take on board things like that. So I think it may be some kind of impetus to introduce that to them and give them that opportunity as early as you can, because that money spent from a community wealth point of view without it being kind of like held up in any way, it can be delivered directly to good causes within the community. The other thing I was going to say, in the land and property element of the kind of metrics, as I would call them, and I have to say the metrics, I'm quite a simplistic character. Those metrics to me are fairly easily read and understood. So whoever put it together, it's quite simple and it's my idea. But under the land and property, I noticed that whilst there's an objective to transfer community assets, in the actual comments in progress, it's mentioned that no particular assets to be marketed to communities. And I'm wondering why that would be, when some of the local active groups, such as CAS, Win, Carluke, Lanarkshire Larkhall Growers, if they knew there was a resource in land or buildings that they could actually come up with an idea to utilise, why would we hold back on making them aware of that? That comment, no particular assets to be marketed to communities. Okay, you're going to distribute material and make people aware, but unless we actually focus in on what do we want to move and how do we want to employ these resources in a practical way as quickly as possible, surely there must be some method of identifying it to local groups. I'm sure Stephen Sweeney would be able to point in the direction of several local groups, more than I've just mentioned there, that could make use of these resources, which in actual fact are redundant at the moment and probably costing the council money on upkeep and things like that. If that, again, just a suggestion.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. I'm not sure that we don't have a policy there that any group can bring anything forward as far as an asset transfer is concerned. But I will look into that comment that you've spoke about there. and see what the reason is behind that. Thanks very much. Alec, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, thanks, John. 2 or 3 points here. Just in what Andy was saying, I have been told in the past we have no policy on asset transfer and how it takes forward. That was a response I got to a particular question. Also, you were talking about wind farms, etc. Another thing to look at, again, maybe would be what can be covered by the likes of the REF fund, Renewable Energy Fund, because it is restrictive in some ways as to what type of projects it can cover. If that could be broadened out a bit to help business develop, if you like, in the rural areas, I would certainly be happier. One thing that, again, in the land and property section I see, and I don't know whether it's a plus or a minus, it says take the 20-minute neighbourhood concept into account when planning capital schemes. Now, in the rural area, most services to many people are not within a 20-minute neighbourhood. So therefore, is that a positive thing for the rural area in that we'll get more points for capital projects, or is it a negative and we'll get less points, so it'll be excluding the rural area further? And finally, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, this type of report we get quite often green, blue, well, blue's new, green, amber and red. Whereas I like to criticise when we see lots of reds there because we're not achieving. When we see lots of greens, the pessimist in me is saying, well, are we targeting things high enough or making it too easy? But that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Previous points were the important ones.
Thanks very much, Alec. And quite right. I think, as Paul said, this is a high-level report. The meat of the subject will be the group that we're setting up to progress these issues and bring them back to the Commission under the chairmanship of Stephen, whether it likes it or not. So these are the type of things that we'll be looking at. I'll bring Cleland in, and I see Paul's also get his hand up.
I was just thinking, we can't win, Alec.
Well, you learned something in 2 years.
We'll need to introduce a new colour, mauve or something like that. So just picking up on Andy's comment, we do support community asset transfer. There's information on the website and there's a forum for inquiry, etc. I think the last time I spoke with Danny Lowe's team, they were dealing with something like 22, 23 active requests. Not all of them go over the line, and there's a range of reasons for that, because there's obviously certain requirements. It's a statutory process, and there's certain requirements that people need to fulfil for us to give them community assets, which are public assets. A number of them sometimes end up being converted into leases because it's more comfortable for the organisation in terms of some of the legal liabilities that an organisation would expose themselves to. So they don't tend to then become finalised community asset transfers. But offline, Andy, if you can, if there are organisations that haven't found their way into that process, send the detail on to us. One of the other things that Council did as part of its budget in February was also set out a series of initiatives, and we'll see some of these come through this route, and we've got a paper later on one of them around social enterprise. But one of the other areas was to try to up the promotion of the opportunities through community asset transfer. So there's definitely there's obviously not a policy not to support community asset transfer. I think it'll go off to a slow start in local authorities in Scotland, I must admit, not just South Lanarkshire, but we're working on that just now. And the intent is to try and find organisations that are robust enough to take on public assets and make them thrive, etc. But it's just when some organisations look at or individuals approach us to look at a community asset transfer and then realise all that they're going to be responsible for, that suddenly that becomes a bit rich for them. So off table, Andy, send me through the detail, and if there are organisations interested, we'll get in touch with them. Thanks.
Is to be read against too many of them at this point. But the other purpose of this was just to say, look, do you like this as a format? So it's a bit of a toe in the water. So don't be alarmed that there are too many greens in there at this point, Councillor Allison. Thank you.
Sorry, John, can I just come back? I did say that
Yes,
bit was tongue in cheek. But the main point was this 20-minute neighbourhood. How does that affect rural areas? Is it a positive thing then when they don't have services within that for capital spend, or is it a negative?
Just in terms of my own role, right, around the capital programme, right, it is not a negative, right? So it's not being bound by 20-minute neighbourhood prerogatives and targets, right? It says it will be taken into account, but it would be taken into account where it's appropriate, and it wouldn't disadvantage rural communities, Councillor Allison.
I'll hold you to that in the future.
You've got it on record. We're taped, Alec. Okay. Right. Listen, I don't see anybody else's hands raised on this. Are we agreed as colleagues that we let this go forward on the basis of the recommendations? Agreed? Thanks very much.
Agreed.
Move on to item 7, which is the Community Wealth Building Quick Quotes, pages 37 to 40. And Craig, can you come back in on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. The report updates the Commission on the changes recently made to the Council's quick quote arrangements and also outlines the potential benefits for community wealth building. Section 3 covers the background, and the Council's standing orders and contracts sets out the requirements for tendering and contract award, and these requirements can very much vary depending upon the type of contract and or the value of it. Quick quote itself is very much a simplified quotation process. It's used by the Council for procuring works, supplies and services up to a value of £50,000. So obviously in the context of what the Council procures is very much at the lower end in terms of value. Section 4 just covers the changes that have now been made, and they were approved at the meeting of the Council on the 22nd of September. The first of these changes is focused on increasing the current limit on procuring works contracts, so effectively construction type contracts, using quick quote. Limit previously was £50,000. That's now been increased to £2 million. And that change itself has been allowed through changes made through Procurement Scotland, essentially through issuing a policy note that allows local authorities to increase the value of works that can be procured through this particular route up to that new upper threshold of 2 million. It's worthwhile noting as well, though, that other procurement routes will also continue to be used, and obviously the Council very much procures collaboratively, has done for a large number of years. Therefore, call-offs from existing frameworks would also be expected to continue. But overall, the choice of procurement route will be guided by the availability of suitable suppliers and obviously the timescales for delivering projects. The second main change to the standing orders and contracts in relation to quick quote was around the requirement to seek quotes from local SMEs. So previously, procuring resources had to secure 2 of 5 quotes coming from local SMEs. That requirement has now been doubled to 4 out of 5. So that includes works contracts to 2 million and also goods and services to £50,000. In effect, there's 2 different levels there that basically sync in with the requirements for regulated procurement spend that's driven by what comes through from Procurement Scotland. The next section of the report covers the anticipated benefits and potential impact on the community wealth building aspirations. And obviously, the increased threshold for works contracts should allow for more contracts to get put out in a shorter period of time. Quick quote itself is a kind of a shorter type of procurement exercise. You can go through evaluation award in a shorter time period compared to, say, an open tender exercise that can take many, many months to complete. An obvious benefit here is that this should enable higher value tender opportunities to be available to South Lanarkshire businesses where they are available. In terms of the change for the number of local quotes, that should obviously allow more local companies to be invited to bid for contracts with the Council. Now, overall, the positive impact of these changes in local companies will very much depend upon local SMEs being available and having the capacity to quote. As we've referenced now a few times during the course of this morning's meeting, there's a really important role here for Supplier Development Programme to support the kind of promotional aspects of this through working with SMEs, encouraging them to register for PCS, and obviously, as Andy's mentioned too as well, just around having a level of alignment in terms of just the promotion and kind of marketing side that will follow the identification of potential procurement opportunities for local businesses. I just mentioned there's a questionnaire that's been put out by both North and South Lanarkshire across the area to construction companies. The question itself closes on Friday of this week, and that's seen as a very much an important tool in gathering information to help to shape the support that can be provided to the sector to further increase participation in those forthcoming tendering opportunities. So in effect, both changes should certainly support one of the main aims of the wealth building strategy in developing local supply base and obviously in growing the local economy. If I can refer the Commission back to the recommendations at section 2 and ask the Commission to note the changes made to the Council's quick quote process and also anticipated benefits for community wealth building. And happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Craig. No, I was really happy to see us accept that change to standing orders, both at Exec and at the full Council. So, I think it is really a step in the right direction. I'll certainly open it up to colleagues for any comments. Alec, see your hand up.
Just quickly, John, the comments I made at the risk register time apply here as well, and like them to be taken into account regarding SMEs. It's a good job Robert Brown and I are here today.
right, Alec. Okay. Cleland?
Sorry, Chair, my hand isn't raised. Apologies.
Oh, well, it was on my screen. Sorry about that. Right, I don't see any other hands raised.
Andy's got his hand up, Chair, I think.
Oh, right, okay. Andy? I don't have it up on my screen, but please, Andy.
I didn't really have my hand up, but I have to say congratulations on actually making some progress. I appreciate it. It's the more the merrier. Keep going. Don't stop there. Carry on. Expand the 50,000 into services and products as well. Get up higher than that, and but I know you need to get the legislation changed. So, but no, I didn't have my hand up. But thanks for inviting me anyway. Maureen's looking after me.
If any hand had been raised on that item, I was expecting your hand to be up anyway. So no, that's fine. I don't have any. I'm going to refer back to Susan here because I don't have any other hands raised. Do you, Susan?
No, that I can see, but I think it's me that could see Andy's, but no further hands. Chair.
Right, okay. Listen, I'm going to just ask colleagues if we agree to note this item, okay?
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Right, we'll move on to the last item, which is item 8, social enterprise sector support in South Lanarkshire. And Stephen, if you can come in this report, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. I'll just find it. This is just a brief report to provide an update on our progress towards supporting the social enterprise sector in South Lanarkshire. So essentially the report acknowledges the award of additional resources in the 21-22 revenue budget. And we're making some early high-level progress towards a new social enterprise strategy for South Lanarkshire. There is an array of existing support out there in terms of advisory support and funding support for businesses, and it applies equally to social enterprises as it does to any other form of business. So, this is really about, under the community wealth building agenda, of recognising the opportunities and importance of this business model, and treating it very much as a key sector in South Lanarkshire. So we're currently recruiting an officer to lead specifically in this area. The applications closed yesterday. I've not had the opportunity this morning to go through these, but we will look to arrange interviews as soon as possible and hopefully recruit somebody to lead on this in early course. So the role will be to lead in setting out what the strategy is and to coordinate actions to support the sector. And paragraph 4.5, we set out some of the aims and the ambitions which we think we'll be looking to deliver through the strategy. So appropriate training, networking, events, reporting and monitoring the progress of the strategy and associated action plan, form a steering group, make sure that all funding opportunities are made available to the sector and are supported to make successful funding applications, grow the capacity, and of course, there's an overlap here with what we were just talking about in terms of the procurement side and ensure that the social enterprise and the third sector have opportunities and are supported to access opportunities through procurement as well. And then, of course, there's overlap with the property side of things to make sure that they're afforded every opportunity to help contribute to the vibrancy and supporting the regeneration of town centres. So we'll look to strengthen the existing areas of collaboration through things like the Lanarkshire Social Enterprise Partnership. We've had early discussions with Stephen since he was appointed at Vaslan, and then look forward to collaborating further there. As I said, we've got the new Business Gateway contractor, Elevator, who themselves are a social enterprise and are very experienced in supporting that sector. So it's about really kind of ramping up that level of support and recognising, there is real opportunity here. So in terms of the next steps, it's really about appointing the officer at the moment and coordinating with our external partners, with the FSB, really coalescing the work that's done to date. How can we improve on that going forward, bring the actions together? And again, as I said previously in earlier discussions, we'll bring that back to the Commission and report progress, actions and measures as we go forward. So just a kind of very high level report at this point on progress. If I could ask the Commission to note progress to date. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Gosh, I really welcome this report, and there's a bit of thanks here go to those members of the cross-party working group from different parties that supported us getting this budget through, which allowed us to put money in for different funding streams as we went forward. And this is a first chance to see us using this money in a very productive way. So thanks very much for that. And I will open it up to colleagues to have a say in this. I see Maureen's got her hand up first, and then Robert, and then Alec. Thanks very much. Maureen.
Thanks, John. Yep, I think this is maybe one of the areas that we could make some decent, quite quick progress in getting set up and going, because Craig will remember in particular in those days before pandemic, which seems like a long time ago, we actually started having some discussions. It was actually before Cleland as well, to be honest. It seems a while ago. We started having some discussions about developing a social enterprise strategy. I think it was Michael and Craig that were involved. And I think, obviously, we are where we are. So I really hope, because there's loads of enthusiasm, there's also excellent leadership and expertise across our social enterprises in South Lanarkshire, and joining up with our colleagues in North, I'm sure we've got a great strength there. So I'm hoping that that will move quickly. So thanks, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Robert.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. We're appointing an officer primarily here in this report, and I suppose the success of the officer is determined by the extent to which we can actually expand the social enterprise sector. But I really want a bit of a flavour, similar to my earlier question, because what's the core of this? Is it to expand, if you like, the number of social enterprises? Is it to increase the use that's made of the existing social enterprises? To what extent can the council create social enterprises, if you like, or stimulate the creation of them? Some of these things emerge from activities that take place locally, where somebody's got a brilliant idea and it's developed and given support to it. But are there other areas where, in fact, we can, if you like, assist the creation of a social enterprise without that framework being in place? What's the flavour of what we're able to do in all of this?
Well, in answer to your questions, Robert, all of those ambitions is what we hope to achieve. We want to increase business birth rate generally in South Lanarkshire, and that includes the social enterprise sector. As part of our general business startup advice, we want to promote that as one of the alternative models to new businesses, and with the help of Elevator, who have got a clear expertise and is clearly articulate to businesses what the different what the pros and cons of different business models are. We want to increase the opportunities for these businesses to trade not only with the council, but the wider public sector through the procurement work and SDP work we've discussed, and increase the opportunities for employment in that sector, access to funding. I mean, really, the whole landscape. It's about elevating the whole support network. I think I mentioned that really develop the existing social enterprise third sector network to enable them to collaborate themselves, perhaps to grow through being able to compete for bigger opportunities through collaboration, through trading with one another. But really, it's just the whole. We'll try and bring all the economic levers together and support all the opportunities that's available to them, and have the same kind of outcomes you would hope to have with any businesses: more vibrant businesses, more employment opportunities, more resilient local collaboration.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Yeah, I'm very much along the lines that nothing's exempt here. We're looking at it at all levels. Right? Are you okay with that, Robert, at this present time?
That's fine, thank you.
Right, Alec, and then Andy.
Yeah, first of all, concur with Maureen, and on this report, it's certainly what we were looking for from what you were saying, John, at budget time when we put money into this. If you'll allow me to diversify a little bit, and because you mentioned that process and also mentions the tourism cooperative strategy here, can you tell us where that got to? Because my hope at the time we agreed the budget for that was that it would be helping this summer past with tourism promotion, if you like, when there was a stay at home. And unless I've missed something, I've not really noticed any report coming forward as to how that has been dealt with, or is it now being targeted to next tourist season, if you like, which we'll need to start promoting now. Sorry if that's off subject, Cleland, but I must have disturbed you.
Well, no, you're quite right, Alec. I think actually we had put forward a certain amount of money over a 2 or 3 year period for a partnership organisation. I'll bring Cleland in first and and then you can maybe explain.
No, it's a good point. And actually, I've had recent discussions with colleagues in community and enterprise. So there was a range of activity over the summer, Alec, and I don't haunt social media for obvious reasons. So some of that bypassed me, and I suppose that was my point, that I wasn't as aware as I thought I would have been of some of that activity. The officers have also had a number of engagements with businesses that are in the tourism or tourism-related sector. And at this point in time, the appetite for us to take forward that, I think the expression is a DMO, I can't remember exactly, but basically that tourism cooperative kind of body, a member-led body to promote tourism in the area, is uncertain. So colleagues in community and enterprise have agreed we're going to run some kind of focused engagement with those businesses over the next, I think the period was November through to January, just to confirm whether there is a model of vehicle, whether it's a cooperative or some other type of model, that there is genuine interest in. Because if the answer is no, and it has been looked at in the past, that's not going to be achievable, we need to then think differently about how we promote businesses and tourism-related businesses, but don't have at the end of the day the same target, which was ultimately for the industry to take on this role over the medium to longer term. So I'll see if I can dust down, Alec, the briefing note that I got from colleagues and maybe bring it back to the next meeting of this group, because I think it is relevant for you to see that colleagues have been active over that period of time, but it might not, the road might not lead to what I had in my mind as the steer from the budget working group, to have an industry-led tourism cooperative that would crash on with us, as we see in places like the Lake District or Highlands, etc., or Gillingham even, that seems to have landed quite well there. And it might just be that our businesses have not had a tradition of being connected, and maybe we need to do some work around tourism trails, so that we pass on customers from one business to another, and develop that as a relationship before we can reapproach the development of a tourism cooperative type model. But Chair, if that's helpful, if I can take that away, I'll pick that up, and if Susan can record that as an action for us, we'll bring a paper back to the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be welcome, Claire. My initial remembering of it was we're establishing costs to have a cooperative run over 3 years, to try and bring tourism forward. So no, that's fine. I think if we get that brought forward, that would be very good.
Sorry,
Andy, I'm sorry, right? Alec, carry on.
That briefing paper, Cleland, as well, would be useful that you got.
That's what I was saying, Alec. I'll get that converted into a paper for this.
All right, I was thinking the briefing paper would come out separate to the report. No, fine, okay.
Okay, fair enough. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Stephen was highlighting the fact about networking as part of the kind of getting people together to get the best out of all the elements of either business or social enterprise, the third sector. There is an existing organisation, well, I say an organisation, it's just a collaboration really, called the Lanarkshire Business Partnership. There's actually an event staged tomorrow. It all stemmed from the hub, which is set up by New College Lanarkshire, their enterprise department, who are interacting with businesses, obviously making sure that the end product that comes out of the colleges actually deliver what the local businesses are looking for. So that initiative has been running now for quite a number of years, in fact over 10 years. But from that, the FSB got involved, and now the Chamber. We've got the Chamber involved. We've also got Business Gateway involved in the former elevator. your sister council is part sponsors of it, and the Royal Bank Scotland, we've got them involved. So FSB, Elevator, North Lanarkshire Council, the college, and the chamber are all involved in this. Tomorrow's event is actually focused on network and learn. It's through Eventbrite, and we've actually got an expert on employment, because obviously it's a hot item at the moment, trying to get recruitment. We heard earlier on about the job fair, where not enough people turned up to accommodate the opportunities that was there. And Olivia Olivares tomorrow is doing a whole talk on hybrid working, because obviously that's a new thing that everybody has to get their head round about. And then she's also talking about retaining your staff, attracting the best staff and retaining them. That Lanarkshire Business Partnership, I'm pretty sure the stakeholders that I'm involved with would be delighted if South Lanarkshire wanted to become part of that. And that's a vehicle that we use quarterly to deliver network and learn events. These have been physical in the past. In fact, one of the best ones we had was at the University of West of Scotland, where we had 130 odd people there. I'm pretty sure some of the folk on the call today were attending at that, and we intend to go back to something more physical when we can get the opportunity. We need venues, but if Stephen or somebody would like to get in contact with me, we can certainly invite them to the next kind of focus meeting for that. We've got events planned for next year. That's just one of the networking things that's already happening that you can piggyback on. You don't need to restart it, and it's actually physically there. It's been in action for quite some time, and I'm pretty sure the information and community wealth building for social enterprise and the third sector, who are all involved in it, they're all attendees at these events. It's there for to use, and obviously the cooperation between North and South would be ideal.
Thanks very much, Andy. I see Stephen's got his hand up there. I would probably have tried to have a look at that myself tomorrow, but I'm at a wind farm presentation with Minister Michael Matheson tomorrow morning out in Larkhall. So I'm afraid, but Stephen, if you want to come in and reply to that, because I think we probably should be represented. If not, you're probably going to say we already are, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think those officers attend most of, if not all, of these meetings. In the chamber, and I think I presented to the chamber last autumn about our kind of recovery plans, etc., just before we went into the second lockdown. And we were actually asked a recent kind of business engagement, or a recent, about 2 years ago, and a business asked us, he says, there's FSB and there's a chamber, and which is the right, organisation to go to, and what we said was, well, I would recommend you go to all these things and find out which one is the best for you, and where you best, make the connections that is most valuable to you, because, I think, that direct contact is invaluable. And I don't know if you remember, Andy, when we had face-to-face events in the Lanarkshire Business Week at Ravenscraig, one of the things we tried was like a speed dating kind of thing. It was a speed networking situation where everybody kind of literally, went around the tables, and it proved to be incredibly popular. But I think it demonstrates just the fact that, these networks are important, and you can't, you can't replace that face-to-face, contact in order to build, these business relationships. So, I think we're supportive of all these organisations. And
well, that's an invitation to join in if you want. I mean, obviously, FSB and the Chamber can be seen as competitive, but in actual fact, we're collaborative, because we need a very strong representation for small businesses and larger businesses in our area. So the FSB have been working with the Chamber closely to increase their membership, just to get them a higher profile, because we know that in the past it's been a difficult one, and it doesn't reflect well in the business community in Lanarkshire at all that we don't have a progressive active chamber. And I know the people who are actually driving it at the moment, they will get there with it, given the right support.
Right. Can you just make sure that we've got somebody there, Stephen?
Yeah.
Especially incumbent now that we've got the Community Wealth Building Commission. We really need to be involved in most of these things going forward. I have Maureen's hand and then Stephen's hand. So Maureen, if you want to come in.
No, sorry, my hand's down, John. I spoke earlier.
Right, okay, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. No, just to come, I guess, go back to this paper, really, probably just echo what Maureen had said when she first came in round about. I think I absolutely see there's a real opportunity for progress quite quickly, around about, social enterprise. We're in a wee bit of a cold spot at the moment, and there's lots of opportunity out there for us to grasp. Just on Andy's point around about the Lanarkshire Business Partnership, I'm going to actually attend tomorrow as well. Initially, I was looking at opportunities to better connect, and was looking at the chamber, but this seemed like a good place to go. So I'm sure, Andy, over time we can reflect on how to have community wealth building maybe even on the agenda at the partnership. But I just wanted to go back to the link, I guess linking enterprise to tourism, and just note the likes of some of the the development associations we have in South Lanarkshire, Carluke and Lanark, whatever else come to mind, and Cleland. I know in one of our recent walk and talk ramblings you were quite strong on the heritage within South Lanarkshire, in particular with Hamilton, and that probably influenced a few conversations I've had with some people locally coming forward with ideas about new organisations and maybe having sort of place-based heritage. And I have got a few like-minded individuals just now, speaking about Hamilton and the opportunity for some sort of development association. So it's maybe just worth noting any other opportunity to link the enterprise, tourism, and the heritage, and not underplay that we've got lots to sell. Thank you.
No, you're quite right, Stephen. We're incredibly lucky in South Lanarkshire to have so many venues that would be open to tourism, both from an agricultural point of view, the history, and also the history itself of the people we've had pass through South Lanarkshire. There's a number of trails that could be activated as we go forward. So, I'm very, very much in favour of us trying to look as closely as possible of ways of developing their tourism, because I definitely think there's a place for South Lanarkshire to have something like a three-day event where people may go to Edinburgh and then Glasgow, but hey, they really should be spending some time in South Lanarkshire in between. So I'm all in favour of the promotion of that. So thanks very much for your contribution. I see I've still got Alex hand up. Am I right? Am I wrong?
As usual, you're wrong.
Andy, your hands appeared again.
I'm all for these green light thinking situations, and we've got an excellent river runs right through the whole of Lanarkshire called the Clyde, and if you think to Florida, where they use these flat-bottomed, wind-driven boats, surely we should maybe encourage some local enterprise to start a tour of the Clyde from the beginning to end. If it was something that, I know it needs to be very, very narrow drafted, because there's bits of it you wouldn't want to take a proper craft into, but then your tourism board, give them a challenge. Tell them if it's somebody that's willing to do taxis on the Clyde, and there you go. There's a starter for 10.
Yeah. Hey, Alan, sorry, right? Yeah,
I can't wait to take a swamp vehicle across the Falls of Clyde.
Listen, I would love to see one of these treetop zip lines things up Charleroi Park. I think I'd be the first person on it. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities that haven't truly been looked at as yet, but I'm sure that we'll get round to doing that. We've got a number of people on the commission here who are extremely good at looking at forward ideas. So I'm really happy that we have the people on board that we have today's meeting. So thanks very much. I don't see any other hands raised.
Just remember, the Clyde doesn't start at the Folly, Clyde's Cleland.
Thanks for that timely reminder, Alec. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to take it that colleagues are quite happy with the recommendations. Okay.
Agreed.
Fine, we move on to the final, which is the date of the next meeting. And I see it's Monday the 7th of February. Okay, does that suit everyone?
So I didn't quite catch that.
I didn't hear you there, Chair.
I think the date that we'll have down for the next meeting is Monday, 7th of February. If we can always reply, if that's not suitable for people, we can rearrange a meeting, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So listen, thanks very much everyone for taking the time to come along today. I think it's been very productive, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the next meeting. And I know it's really early, but seeing as we may not see some of you before Christmas, have a happy Halloween and best Christmas wishes. Okay. Speak to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.